Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that. But don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is CinemAddicts episode 291. We are covering movies coming out the week of Friday, April 25th, 2025. Movies reviewed this episode include On Swift Horses, Fréwaka, Mob Cops, and Yadang the Snitch. Also for On Swift Horses, you will be treated, hopefully it's a treat, with my interview with On Swift Horses director Daniel Minahan. So Eric Holmes, joined by Eric Holmes. How are you, buddy?
Not bad. Not bad. We just recorded the Patreon episode. It was a fun episode.
Very good.
And you should go check that out. And thank you again to the Patreon subscribers.
Thank you on.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you on Patreon members.
More than just like the $5 a month, but more so the recommendations we get and the movies that we get to watch, and especially Greg will get to watch in for the 2003 movies.
Okay, so this month, which is pretty ending within a week, we picked Krampus. Krampus, right? Is the pick by Nathan Day. Thank you, Nathan, for that. Also, our buddy William Lindis picked Spring. Spring and Krampus are the picks for the month of April. We're spotlighting the year 2015. For the month of May, we just randomized it. Eric picked the year 2003, and he's referencing this movie called Old Boy, directed. Who's the director? Not Director Park. Is it Director
Well,
Park?
the one you saw is directed by Spike Lee.
Yes, I did that junket too. So I've seen the Spike Lee version of Old Boy, and I remember years ago I got a lot of people mad at our CinemAddicts Facebook group by saying, "Why even watch the original?" Was it Chan-wook Park? The original Park film, Old Boy, when I've already seen Spike Lee's version, and how can you beat that? Then I got a little bit of flack for that. So, have you seen Spike Lee's version of Old Boy, Eric Holmes?
I have not. So it's egregious on my end, I suppose.
Can we make a deal for the month of May? I will watch Old Boy, maybe do a rewatch of Spike Lee's Old Boy. Can you promise me to watch Spike Lee's Old Boy just for kicks?
Actually, yeah. I'll do that.
All right.
Because I think it'll be fun, sort of, because like Old Boy's pretty, the Park Chan-wook Old Boy is pretty revered.
Yes.
And I've not seen Spike Lee's Old Boy, so I don't know what the comparisons would be, but it would be fun to kind of compare and contrast. Especially since you saw the Spike Lee one first, you won't be like, oh, it's not as good as the original, because you haven't seen the original. You've seen the remake, then maybe, and you either liked it or hated it. I assumed you liked it, and then maybe you'll go back and watch the original, and you won't have the same knee-jerk hate for it.
No, I loved. Okay, well, I'll tell you, I really enjoyed Spike Lee's Old Boy. Will be funny to see what I think of the original. I might even like the original more.
We've just copied Spike Lee.
and listen, we here at CinemAddicts, we're pretty expert when it comes to cinema. And I tell you from the bottom of my heart that Old Boy, at the very root of it, it's a great family film. Eric, family film?
Oh,
Old Boy.
Well, yes.
That's all. Technically, yes. That's all we're gonna say. That's all we're gonna say regarding Old Boy. So again, how are we doing, Eric? What's been going on last week? Been working a lot, cooking steaks. Making peppers. How did they fermented them 2 weeks ago? How did the peppers turn out after you did that for a while?
So they're still fermenting because I gotta order some. I gotta order some woozy bottles because I was gonna make the sauces
right.
Just as I was about to do that, thank God I didn't. I was like, I have nothing to put these in, so I have to order some bottles to put them in once the sauces are done.
Okay, and what are you going to use the sauces for? Those fermented peppers? Is it all-purpose sauce for maybe just all kinds of meats? Or
so I get the base. I'm going to use half of it to make a blueberry pepper sauce, and the other half I'm going to use a green chili pepper sauce. But what I have what's in the fermentation is we got onions, garlic, jalapeno peppers, habanero peppers, and serrano peppers, and so that's going to be like the base sauce, and then I'll cook some blueberries, put that in half of it, and cook some green chilies and put that and add spices and whatnot into each of them.
And these are taste tested. These are taste tested good sauces. You've tried them before, or are you experimenting?
Yeah, well, so this the base that I made, I've not tested before because before I had the jalapenos and a couple like habaneros. This one I got a ton of habaneros in there, so this one's probably gonna be a lot hotter than the previous one. And yeah, there's that. But another thing I didn't mention on the Patreon, I'll mention here. I mentioned Blood on the Clock Tower a couple times here and there.
Over the years, yeah.
Love that game. They announced that they're doing Final 3 Con pretty soon. I think in Washington, like Washington DC. But they announced a Clock Tower Con in Las Vegas on October 24th. Now, me and my friends Natalie and Zoe were talking about like just going to Vegas for something, but we didn't know what for. And then they announced the Clock Tower Con in Vegas, and Zoe's played Clock Tower twice with me running it. Natalie hasn't played it at all, but we were looking for an excuse to go to Las Vegas, and that's like 2 days after my birthday. So they bought me the tickets or the badges for the Clock Tower Con. So if you're going to be in Vegas from the 24th through the 26th, so will I. Come say hi to me.
Okay, so the 24th and 26th of what again? Of
October.
October?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's a ways off, but I'm pretty excited about that.
This is an early promo from Eric Holmes. Remember, keep October 24th to the 26th on your calendar for fellow cinematics, and you can meet Eric Holmes over in Las Vegas.
And if you've never played Blood on the Clock Tower, this might be a good first time to get your feet wet a little bit.
Yes. Okay. All right. So keep on promoting leading up to that. We'll get some, hopefully someone over at CinemAddicts from our listeners will come and visit you and your friends over at the, that'll be very, awesome. That'll be very, very awesome.
The listener, you mean my friends will come maybe see me and my other friends.
Yes. These are not more. You guys are not just listeners. You guys are friends, not only of the show, friends of friends. We are all friends here over at CinemAddicts. Let's get to movies. Eric Holmes on Swift Horses. Do you know anything about Will Poulter from Meet the... Yes.
He's an actor in The Revenant.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay, yes, we just covered sort of The Revenant because we covered the year 2015. I don't remember him in The Revenant. I'm assuming he's one of the soldiers, right?
He's in the group that's traveling. He's kind of Tom Hardy. It's been a while since I've seen it, but he's kind of like, he kind of follows Tom Hardy around.
Oh, very cool. I definitely have to thank you, Eric, for that. By the way, so Will Poulter's in it, Daisy Edgar Jones, Jacob Elordi from last year's Saltburn. Here is a premise for On Swift Horses. It's based on a novel, so it centers on this woman named Muriel. She and her husband Lee, played by Will Poulter, they're starting a new life in California after he returns from the Korean War. But their stability is shaken when the arrival of Lee's charismatic brother Julius, played by Jacob Elordi, he's a wayward gambler with a secret past, enters their lives. I am reading the official plot summary, which is kind of messed up because it mixes up what happens. Ultimately, Muriel, she meets the brother of her soon-to-be husband, Lee. Again, Lee's played by Will Poulter. Muriel meets Julius. He is half naked. It's in the middle of winter. I think in Kansas. He's lying down on the car, and he looks very James Dean-esque. And she's immediately attracted to him. Maybe not as like she wants to fool around with him. She's attracted to Julius's spirit. And they have a very memorable night because Julius is that charming guy who has a very interesting presence. And then Lee, her soon-to-be husband, he's just a straight-laced guy who wants to build a family. Both of them are hardworking people, save up money for a house. He is a very straight and narrow kind of person, which is great. But Julius, he teaches on that first night of meeting Muriel, he teaches her a couple of gambling tricks, and she's immediately attracted to what Julius has to offer. Julius is more of a devil-may-care, charismatic kind of person. So the movie centers on this. It seems like a love triangle, but it's really not because the narrative splits wide open and you follow Muriel's journey in California with her husband, Lee. Muriel eventually, she's a hard worker, but she's inspired by Julius and she becomes very interested in horse racing and horse races. And she starts betting on horses. She starts a gambling streak. And then ultimately she possibly explores a love with another woman, a love interest to Muriel in the film for On Swift Horses. And then Lee is just the guy whose his main dream is to build that home with Muriel and have kids and just have a really nice atomic family. Okay, this is set around the Korean War era. They're both the brothers are both Korean War veterans. Meanwhile, Julius, again played by Jacob Elordi, he's now in Las Vegas. He ends up meeting his coworker. He ends up getting a job at a casino trying to catch cheaters. So whenever he sees a cheater, he will basically inform on the cheater and tell the pit boss that, hey, that person's cheating. So he's making good money from that. His coworker in this casino is played by Diego Calva, and ultimately Julius has a relationship with this employee in the casino. So you're following these two tracks where Muriel has a new relationship with that character played by Sacha Kaye, and also Julius has a relationship with that person played by Diego Calva. And it's a very interesting epic drama about their lives. The running time's 119 minutes. It plays in New York and LA April 25th, directed by Daniel Minahan. You're going to hear Daniel's thoughts on the movie as well, because you're going to hear the interview in the coming moments. But my overall review of this movie is the caveat is the ending of the movie is a little bit more, it's not as clear cut regarding what happens to these characters. And I really love the ending, and it's a very resonant film. And it reminded me of a lot of the movies from the 1950s or early 60s, which would star Montgomery Clift or James Dean. In fact, the director Daniel Minahan mentioned a couple of movies that served as an inspiration for this. He included the movies Picnic, which I believe, I think that movie stars William Holden and Kim Novak. And then he also mentioned another movie called All Fall Down, which stars Warren Beatty. And the Warren Beatty character in All Fall Down served as sort of a template or an inspiration for Jacob Elordi's performance as Julius. Daisy Edgar Jones is excellent in On Swift Horses, as is Elordi. They are the main characters, the main actors for On Swift Horses. If you are a fan of their work and their talents, their respective talents, you're going to love On Swift Horses. Is it a sweeping romantic drama? It's sweeping in a sense. It's a very new take on what love or what romantic love is all about, especially when you have these queer relationships. It's really interesting to see how they're spun off around this era when those type of relationships were frowned upon, right? So there's a lot of different elements. There's also, it says On Swift Horses. There's a horse racing element, and there's a horse element in this movie. There's just different types of layers for On Swift Horses. And again, the ending is pretty, in my opinion, even though open-ended, very resonant. I really enjoyed On Swift Horses. Actually, that's my top pick of the week. I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars in New York and in Los Angeles, April 25th. And it will be in wider markets in the coming weeks. So if you want more information on Swift Horses, we will get to Eric's review of, what movie is Eric going to review? Yes, Eric is going to review Mob Cops shortly. But before we get to Mob Cops, let's get to my interview with Daniel Minahan. So I'm with filmmaker Daniel Minahan for On Swift Horses. I really love this movie, Daniel. This is a love story that I don't often see in cinema. Can you elaborate on that? It's a movie about becoming. It's a movie about how love can really affect change in other people, no matter what time and space separates two people. Can you just talk about what drew you to this love story for On Swift Horses?
Yeah, I read the novel On Swift Horses during lockdown. It was sent to me, and I fell in love with it and reached out to Shannon Pufel, the novelist, and we secured the rights to it. But the thing that really spoke to me about it was I felt like I recognized aspects of myself in it, which is something I always look for. You know, I want to be sure that I can bring something to it. But it also described a kind of a love story that I hadn't seen before. You know, these two people who will never end up together, one's gay, one's queer, have this intense connection and change the direction of each other's lives. And I thought that was really unique. I knew I wanted to do a love story, and this was something that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah, Daniel, I know along with being a veteran filmmaker, you're also a lifelong cinephile, but while you're shooting this movie, were you thinking, how did you capture that spirit of a lot of those beautiful films from yesteryear. I'm thinking this in another time and places. One of the leads would be Montgomery Clift. The other person possibly would be Natalie Wood. I'm trying to fill out the other two roles for
Yeah.
those, but it's just maybe it'd be a George Stevens Jr. film or Kazan. Did you ever feel that way, or no? So.
Well, I'll tell you, the novel evokes a lot of literature. I realized as I was reading it, I felt the hand of or the influence of Gore Vidal, of James Baldwin, of Patricia Highsmith, and then there's also a lot of different genre, that are familiar to us, like film noir, the melodrama, the gambling story, the love story, and the love triangle. When we set out to adapt it, I was really clear with the cinematographer that I didn't want to imitate or try to imitate movies from the 50s. So instead, we looked at documentary photography like Bruce Davidson and Gordon Parks, the incredible journalistic photographer and filmmaker, uh, and Vivian Mayer, and those were sort of like our touchstone. And then we decided that we would just follow the emotion. I think in the end, it's very evocative of 1950s films, and but I'll say that that wasn't by design. We were just trying to follow these characters on their journey.
I think without giving too much away, when we meet Julius, we feel that he has this aura about him. He has this presence. And when we meet Muriel, she feels like she's coming of age, trying to find herself. So when they meet, one person is sort of the dominant presence and the other person is sort of receding and observing. And as we follow their journey, you see one of them really just, Muriel, you just see her just expand as a human being and broaden her scope. While Julius does the same thing too, but he goes through so much more inner turmoil. Can you just talk about that really cool, I think, flip on that trope, I suppose?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of twinning and mirroring that goes on between Muriel and Julius. I think Muriel's in love with his independence and the way Julius moves through the world in freedom, and she's in a very conventional relationship and a marriage. And then I think Julius is fascinated with the idea of belonging somewhere, and that's what he's trying to do with Henry, is make a home with Henry the way Lee and Muriel are making a home. So I think there's this kind of give and take between the characters, and you really feel their influence on each other. And that was really appealing to me. They have very few scenes together. You could count on one hand the number of scenes that they have together, but it's really the story of this romance between these two spirits that are, that really see each other and really are influenced by one another.
Well, I'm definitely not in the know, but so in layman's terms, how difficult was it to shoot that night shot sequence where Muriel is going to meet Sandra at her home? She's having a little get together and it's just beautifully shot. And sometimes I guess the myth is it's really hard to shoot at night because it's hard, but you and your DP did such a great job. Was there a challenge in accomplishing that sequence?
Well, I think the sequence you're describing is the one where Muriel comes back from her thwarted attempt to connect with that woman at the bar in town, the Chester. She's a little drunk and a little tipsy. She has her shoes off and she's, walking back to her house through the housing development. Notices there's a party at Sandra's house, goes in, and it's not just a party, it's a house party of all women. And it's something she hasn't seen before. So shooting at night is always a challenge. We especially that scene outside the house. Our cinematographer Luc Montpellier was really into the idea of shooting at twilight for our night stuff, so that there was color in the sky. That's why the blues are so rich at night in the sky. We didn't add that later. It created a lot of pressure on us to get performance when we were shooting night stuff in twilight, but that was luckily just a very limited shot. The rest of it was lit in a more conventional way when they're on the back porch, when they go into the backyard and they make love for the first time. That was much easier. The only obstacle was that it was maybe the coldest winter in LA history, and you could see everyone's breath. And they actors were so cold at between takes they would run. I had a giant down coat and they would just come inside my down coat. And Daisy and Sasha we would like stand there and all shiver together, and then they would go back out and pretend it was a balmy summer night.
And you know this trope more than anyone. When a lot of people complain I guess the choice between film and television, a lot of people will say, well, film pushes visual, television pushes narrative. How worn out is that trope? Because it seems like one feeds the other. And when you look at, you should know with television and long form series, it's getting more visually immersive. And then you can find great narratives like On Swift Horses in cinema. Is that trope just should not, does that even apply to anything anymore?
Yeah, I don't really agree with that characterization. I think because the kind of stuff I've been lucky enough to work on in series is, I get crushes on writers. Like I'm really fascinated by Alan Ball, I was lucky enough to work with David Milch in his heyday, Dan Weiss and David Benioff, like really extraordinary writers. And I always think of series as being more novelistic in its approach because you have more time to really explore character things and develop stories and go on to tangents that are, more literary, honestly. And then I see film as being a little bit more of maybe the difference between if a series is a novel, then I see a feature as a poem. You have to have a very concise idea of what it is you want to say and what it is you want to do because you have a limited amount of time, like 90 minutes to 2 hours usually. So, those things both really appeal to me. I've spent a lot of time working in series, and so getting back into features was really rewarding for me and really a great challenge. And I felt like I could put all of my filmmaking experience that I got in series into telling this story, which is basically a character-driven story. It's not high concept. It's not ironic. It's a very earnest, heartfelt love story.
And Daniel, along with falling in love with writers, I'm sure you're assumedly so falling in love with the crew you work with on a given project. And I was wondering, what does it take to be an effective filmmaker when you're working with so many different artists on a production, working with producers as well? Is there an unlock as far as being an effective leader as far as a filmmaker? And do those skill sets vary from project to project or not, maybe?
Yeah, it's funny because I originally went to art school and studied to be a painter. And right away, I got interested in film and I worked in documentaries. But I felt that studio, working in a studio painting and creating art was a little bit too solitary for my character. And so I was really attracted to narrative filmmaking and put all my energy towards that. I think everything's informed by my art history experience. But, I think my job as a director is to create this kind of family. I see every film as an opportunity to create a family and a creative family. And so getting everybody on the same page and everyone to understand the tone of the piece and how we want it to play and how we want it to feel. Everyone from the actors to the production designer, the costume designer, the camera operators, obviously the cinematographer and the producers, because it's all one big effort. So I think the secret to being a good leader is communication, making people feel heard. And really the thing that appeals to me is when people show up on set with an idea, and it's sort of like Christmas Day for me, the production designer will surprise me with, some set dressing, and I'll say, well, let's use that, or let's use that little room that, you dressed so beautifully, even though we weren't going to shoot in there. The actors come with their interpretation of the material. Hopefully by the time we get to set, we've rehearsed a bit and we have a good sense of what we're doing. But even within that, there's surprises and the disparate thing that happens that really, to me, makes it feel like real human behavior. And that's the really exciting part of it for me.
Thank you so much for your time. My final question to you is, right off the top of your head as a cinephile, can you name one of your all-time favorite movies? And what is it about this movie that makes it special and a little B-side to that, what makes Cleo from 5 to 7 so special? Because that's a movie, I saw that on your IG feed. That's a movie that I've been waiting for years to see, and I don't know why I haven't even seen it yet. So,
Where do I begin?
sorry.
I mean, Cleo from 5 to 7 is a very significant film for me. It imagines this woman who's waiting for her cancer diagnosis, and she spends 2 hours, and we're with her for 2 hours. And while she kind of has this existential dilemma, and walks through her whole life with this dread and expectation, and she even falls in love. It's a 5 to 7 is a term in French that describes the moment when you have an affair. When people typically will meet their lovers from 5 to 7 after work. And this instead, she's in complete distress. It's a very beautiful film by Agnes Varda, and it's really remarkable. And kind of bridges the gap between my interest as a documentary filmmaker into narrative, because it's a film that it's considered one of the great French New Wave films, and it kind of works in this very naturalistic way, and it's just spectacular. If you have a chance to see it, you really should. The films that we watched when we were first dreaming about this and trying to find the tone of it in the writing were these two films, Picnic, the screenplay by William Inge with Kim Novak in the lead and William Holden. And then another film called All Fall Down, which is an early Warren Beatty film, also William Inge. And there's a character in All Fall Down played by Warren Beatty who is very reminiscent of Julius and really suited to this story, I think. He's sort of like a person whose beauty and has this effect of literally stopping traffic. And I thought, oh, that's Julius. And interestingly, when I met with Jacob Elordi, the first actor he wanted to talk about, he was interested in comps. The first actor he wanted to talk about was Warren Beatty. And I thought that was really fortuitous.
Daniel, really loved On Swift Horses. Good luck with your film. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks. It was a pleasure talking with you.
All right, Eric, I am mad at you.
That was a really good interview.
Oh, thank you, Eric. I'm a very good interviewer.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised. I'm just basically stating the obvious. Greg, that was a good interview.
Thank you. By the way, something that you didn't notice last couple months. Did you notice something about me? The way I look? Anything?
Well, I mean, no mustache.
No mustache? What else? Huh?
Imagining your mustache there.
Oh, you're imagining the mustache. I lost 20 pounds. 20 pounds last 2 months. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I know we don't mention personal stuff here over in Cinematics, but yeah, I do miss the mustache myself, by the way. My mommy said I should take the mustache off.
So that mustache weighed 20 pounds.
The mustache weighed about 20, actually 15 pounds, and I lost actually 5 pounds. Very good. I'm mad at you because I forgot that Mob Cops, which is in theaters, digital, and on demand April 25th, comes out again Friday. And Mob Cops I wish I got to see this movie. I'm going to ask for a screener link. It stars Kevin Connolly, David Arquette, and Jeremy Luke. It's a, quote, thrilling crime drama about the darkest corruption case in the history of the NYPD. Centers on quote, when a retired NYPD detective writes a book about his family's ties to the mob, it creates a firestorm between the dirty cops working for the city's brutal crime boss, sorry about that, and the officers trying to bring them to justice. So I'm assuming, Eric, that David Arquette and Jeremy Luke are corrupt cops in the movie, or am I wrong? What is this movie about?
No, that's exactly it.
Okay.
I don't think that I think the retired NYPD detective writing a book.
That's just a template.
That's not in the movie.
Oh,
that's
backdrop.
what the movie. That's what the movie. The book, and then the movie was probably adapted from that book, I imagine. If there is a writer in the, there is a writer in the movie, I missed that part. But what I didn't miss was a kind of.
Eric, we got the screener link to The Surfer from starring Nicolas Cage. Make sure you get that on your emails. See, I'm just annoying Eric right now because he's going into the review, and I'm just saying this. By the way, you guys will get a review of the Nicolas Cage movie, The Surfer. Are you excited, Eric?
Yeah, I'm always excited for more Nick Cage.
How about Mob Cops? Are you excited about Mob Cops? I'm sorry for that.
You know what? So Jeremy Luke's been in a bunch of stuff, and I interviewed him today.
Oh,
so I was like, well, I should figure out what character. It's like, oh, he's playing Leo Benetti. It's like, I think like 10th listed in the cast thing. I was
Right.
like, oh, he's probably just gonna have a little part. No, him and David Arquette are like the two main characters throughout most of it. And
Okay.
I love his character in this so much. Like he's
What
kind
did you
of
love about him? Yeah, go ahead.
he's got well, I mentioned it to him in the interview. He probably thought I was, just gassing him up, but he's got like the kind of Joe Pesci in Goodfellas kind of vibe to him.
Mm.
Like not like he's not that character, but you know how like Joe Pesci's when you watch Goodfellas,
He's the
fun.
catalyst. He's the catalyst of
Yeah,
things.
and he's a fun character to watch throughout
Sure.
that. There's a bunch of other great characters in there, but Joe Pesci's the one and that's what Jeremy Luke is in this movie. There's a bunch of great characters. David Arquette kind of plays more of a straight man, which is weird because it's David Arquette. Usually you would think he would be more comic relief or bring more levity to it, but David Arquette's playing this like dead solid straight.
And he does a great job because he's such a talented actor. I mean, there's no question about that. So
yeah, no, I'm not
no, I'm not saying that. Yeah,
yeah, Jeremy Luke's great in this.
Eric, who has the bigger storyline though? It's Jeremy Luke and David Arquette.
It's pretty even, I think.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, because they're kind of two sides of the same coin, sort of thing. Like David Arquette's like, like they're both corrupt cops, but David Arquette's trying to like be serious about stuff. Jeremy Luke will fly off the handle. Well, his character Leo and David Arquette is Sammy. No, but anyway, Sammy will be a little more straight. Let's do this how we're supposed to do this. Leo's always wanting to kind of cause ruckus. He doesn't know how to keep a low profile. He's always trying to he wants to become an actor. And so he like starts pushing towards that stuff. He's like the kind of guy that can come into a lot of money and everyone knows he came into a lot of money, which automatically throws suspicion on you. So it's a corrupt cop movie. It's definitely a gangster movie, and it's a pretty good one. I would say like the beginning of it, it's not a cold open, but there's like a scene that kind of plays like a cold open. That was a bit worrisome because I was like, I don't know how this one's going to turn out. But then once they introduce Leo and then you follow him and David Arquette, then the movie was really, really a great time for me. So,
well, the movie's directed by Danny A. Abeyta, and I remember because Abeyta directed a movie in 2019 called Mob Town, and I remember actually enjoying that film. And that movie, by the way, Eric, this is not like you ever have any time for anything. It stars David Arquette in it, and he's the lead. So, Eric, I'm just saying, if you ever want to see it, he's the lead in Mob Town. And if I recall, Arquette's very good in that as well. So, second time working with Abeyta, if he hasn't worked with him even more. So, anyways,
I'd be down to watch it. If Jeremy Luke's in it, I'm definitely down to watch it. He's like one of the new guys that like my new discovery. Like I will from now on watch anything Jeremy Luke's in.
Because he's so good, you really liked him.
I loved his character in this so much.
Okay.
And the weird thing about this movie is that I don't think it's set in Boston. It's called Mob Cops. You figure that it just kind of rolls off the tongue, but
yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's like you're right. It's an NYPD movie. You like Luke, you like Arquette. Big picture for Mob Cops. So, what is your overall take on the movie?
It started off rough. Got better once Leo shows up. I might say this movie's a little too short because there's a lot of story to tell. And I do appreciate that there's a lot of story to tell. So there's like no fat on this. Like you just go.
Women have never said that women have always called me fat and they've always called me too short. So I'm really not happy with what the things you're doing.
This is not a Sirs of
87 minutes, by the way, Mob Cops.
Yeah. Also, not a Sirs of Us. It was a family show, though. But the pace is pretty quick, and I appreciate that. I would have liked to see a longer version of it, so some scenes can maybe breathe a little more.
Sure.
That said, under an hour and a half. It's got a great performances, a great character in Leo Benetti.
Wow.
The only knock against it I got is that like first 5 minutes or so. And I guess there's some
How's the action? Good good enough?
Not a lot of action.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, like how much action is in Casino? How much action is in Goodfellas? That's kind of what you got here. You do have some scenes where like someone's tied up, they're being tortured. Who was in the car? That sort of thing. But there's not like big action scenes. This is pretty much just a mob movie. But yeah, I kind of wish it could have been a little longer. There's certain scenes, like certain bits of dialogue that seem kind of cheesy, but also at the same time, it's like, is the writing cheesy or are these characters cheesy? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you nail a character so well, but they'll say a line where you roll your eyes and then you're like, oh, the writing in that is so stupid. But then you stop and think about it, it's like, nah, that character would say exactly that. So you kind of give it a pass. But yeah, Mob Cops.
Yeah, Mob Cops. What is your rating on Mob Cops?
Park the car in the car park and watch Mob Cops again. Yeah, this one's good. It's 4.
Okay.
I think this is like a 3.5, but Jeremy Luke bumps it up at least half a star. I kind of want to go 4.5, but we'll see how many times I end up watching this. I would watch this a bunch of times.
Oh, so I should request. I should watch it, Eric, huh?
I would. I think you would like this.
Okay.
But yeah, if you like Goodfellas, Casino, like those kind of movies, I wouldn't say it's as good as Goodfellas. That's a little too much, but it's in that wheelhouse. And if you dig that sort of thing, you would dig this, I think.
Directed by Danny Abgesser and also starring Kevin Connolly, David Arquette, and Jeremy Luke. Mob Cops. 4 stars from Eric Holmes, theaters, digital, and on demand, April 25th. And I'm going to try something. Let's just mix up our weekly cinematics episodes. Here is Eric's interview with Jeremy Luke, and then I'll also be back with a Korean movie to top off the show before we get out of here. And I'm going to give Eric Holmes some bad news in a few moments. All right, here is the interview.
Oh, not bad. I actually just watched this last night. Enjoyed it quite a bit. Your character especially got kind of that not the same character, but that Joe Pesci in Goodfellas vibe, where it's like kind of 70% of why you watch the movie. So I really enjoyed your character in this. What brought this movie to you?
So Danny Abgesser is a friend of mine. We became friends. We did a movie called Inside Man. I was in Inside Man starring Emile Hirsch. And I heard that Danny was casting Mob Cops, and I read the script early. I think I was like one of the first people to read the script, and I was just fascinated by a person who was living a bunch of different lives. He was a cop. He was working for the mob. He was an actor. He had like a bunch of things going on, secret lives going on. So it just really fascinated me. And I asked Danny if I could make a tape, and he was like, oh, you're not right for it. And I was like, I know. I'm just going to make it. I'll send it to you. But he didn't see it, which I understand because I don't really fit the physical description of who he is on paper, So that's what happened. But I thought it was fascinating because he was an actor also, which I could identify with, and he was a pretty not well known, but he was in some well-known movies.
Yeah. And well, there you go. So your character, now I'm not an actor, so I don't know how this works, but I've heard of this. But like, your character eats a lot in this movie. And I've heard that if you have a scene where like you eat one thing, you did 20 takes, so you actually ate 20 of the thing that you actually ate on camera. What can you tell me about that? Because your character has a lot of scenes, and I didn't notice it right away, but like there was one point where like you had like a full thing. I'm like, oh, I hope that only took like a take or two, or otherwise it's gonna be pretty full through half the day.
It's actually funny you said that because there's a couple of ways to do it, right? One is you have a spit bucket, so you literally take a bite. And you have to eat. If you don't have to eat it, they say cut. You still got the food in your mouth. Then you go, and you spit it into a bucket. 2 is you eat it and you don't eat lunch that day.
All right. Which one's your favorite? Do you just go in, look at the scene, go, you know what? I got these scenes. I'll skip breakfast this morning.
Usually that's like, but the food's not usually good, right? It's like props has the food, and we had the eggs, and I remember the diner scene, the eggs were cold, and I ate a lot of eggs, and I put a lot of salt because he was a big. I made that he was a big salt guy, so salt was a big thing. for him. He had a big appetite. He was a big personality, big appetite. That whole thing. Big guy.
Yeah, and you've been in a ton of movies. What's some of your favorite characters to play, and maybe like what's a role that you haven't got yet that was like I'm like this is my unicorn. I cannot wait to get this role.
Eric, I want to play an astronaut or a scientist. I'm just kidding. Honestly, like I don't have roles that I would like to play. I'd like to play like a good guy, or I'd like to do a sitcom. I gravitate more towards comedy, to be completely honest. I would love to do like a sitcom, something light and fun, maybe a Family Man or something along those lines. That's something that I've done that before, which was a lot of fun. But I think that's where I would like to. That's what I would like to do. But to be completely honest, like I'm open to everything. Just good scripts. Good people to work with, good collaborators. That's what really that's what I like.
Is there anything with acting that like poses as a particular challenge or that's maybe more fun than other bits of it?
This was challenging. This movie was challenging for me because he was way bigger than me. I had a month to get ready. I had to read a lot. There wasn't much. There wasn't much on him, so I had to. But there was much. What I'm saying is there wasn't a lot of film that was on him. So for this was like really, really interesting to me, and like the way he led his life was really cool. I don't have anything like off the bat that I'm like, oh, this is something that I would like to play right now. I don't really have anything right now.
Yeah. And with this, because you're playing a real person, do you feel any sort of responsibility? Because you said you didn't have much on this person, so I'm assuming a lot of the character is part of what's on the script and part of what you create and add to it. But do you feel any responsibility of like this is a real person? I should probably try to lean towards one way, or do you just kind of go for it however you can?
I did take what I could out of the book, and then I took a lot of creative license to do what I did, but I didn't feel a big responsibility to get him right. He wasn't, it wasn't like I was playing Gandhi, where it was like a really stand-up person. Like he did some terror. I'm sure he was a great family man and stuff from what I read. And he had very good qualities like everybody does, but he did some pretty terrible things. So I kind of took creative license to do a lot as far as physically and, just the tics and stuff that he had.
Yeah. And then I see you did a little bit of producing and writing. Is there any like you're predominantly an actor, but you've done some behind the scenes stuff? Is there any more of that in your future, you think, or is that just not something you aspire to? Or
I mean, I produced something with Joey Russo, who was in Mob Cops too. He played Galliano.
Okay.
Yeah, so I produced him and I had a show that was on Netflix for a year. And then it was on Amazon. It was called Small Shots. And I just pretty much, I was one of the producers on that. And then right now I've been producing theater. I mean, I just directed and produced a short film. I just produce stuff that I like, that I really, really love.
Yeah. So
there's something that I want to get started and I don't really have, I'm not looking for somebody to do it. I kind of just take it upon myself. Then that usually goes with like doing plays and stuff.
So I understand that like with movies, you'd say 100 different people have 100 different versions of what a producer is. Is that similar with theater, or what's a producer do for a theater?
Well, producer for theater, what I do is I get the theater. I put up the money for the theater. I put up the money for the props, the set, the actors, etc. Kind of, put it all together. And I actually directed a play this past year. So, and I also bring the audience, but I do have help usually. My friend Leaf helps me. We've kind of been doing this together for 20 years.
Yeah. You said you're directing a play or a short?
Yeah, no, I did direct a play. I did direct a short recently. Yeah.
Is that coming out anytime soon? Where can that be found?
Right now we're editing, so it's not going to come out. It'll probably come out in a couple of months.
All right. So what's the short about?
I can't really talk. I can't. It's a short film, so I can't get.
Oh yeah. Once you explain it, that's the thing.
So I can't give it away because if I say a couple of things, you're gonna be like, what? It'll give the whole thing away.
Cool.
But I still have it on I'll make an announcement on. That's my social, Jeremy Luke 323 on Instagram. So I'll make an announcement on my Instagram too.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. Was there did that inspire anything in the future? Maybe got a feature length you want to direct, or is it one of those things you did the short and it's like, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love directing. I don't love producing. To be completely honest, it's just like it's just one of those things where I have to do it in a certain sense. Like if I don't do it, then who's going to? It's one of those things like it's almost easier if I do it because I know what I'm doing. So it just makes things easier. I just kind of do it by default.
Yeah, I get that. But Mob Cops will be in theaters, on demand, and digital April 25th. That's this Friday. Encourage everyone to go see it. Again, yeah, the movies, it's I wouldn't call it funny, but like your character definitely has a charm. This kind of lightens up certain moods that would otherwise be a little too dark. I would say, but I really enjoyed your character. I guess going out, I just want to get a movie recommendation from you. Maybe something that's lesser seen that you really enjoy. It's like this is really good and no one talks about it.
Well, today is April 22nd. 2025 or 23rd. I think it was 23rd, 2025. I saw this movie that was so good, Warfare. Did you hear about this?
Oh, the Alex Garland and I can't remember who else co-director with them.
I don't think people have heard about it yet. I'm sure it'll get some buzz as it goes along, but I saw it this week and it was fantastic. It was about these soldiers that are trapped in a neighborhood in Iraq, and basically in 2006, and the whole neighborhood comes down on them. It's really, really, really good.
Well, yeah, I believe that's in theaters, so maybe check that out after you watch Mob Cops. But and then go watch Mob Cops again after you watch Warfare.
After you go see Mob Cops, then you can go see it. Yeah.
But yeah, Jeremy, thanks for joining me. I really enjoyed the movie, and yeah, congratulations on it. Wish you all the success.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Okay, guys, we are back.
That was a wonderful interview. You're getting
that was
you look even more handsome in that.
Oh, thank you. That was not me. That was actually you speaking with Jeremy.
Oh, okay, see. It's all starting to make sense.
Okay,
now.
Yes, no, yeah, that's why you're so great because you just interviewed Jeremy Luke. Okay, thank you for that interview, Eric Holmes. We're gonna close the show in a second. Eric, I apologize because due to time elements, Bruce Perky over at the Cinematic, he has a couple of reviews. One of them is the assigned pick from Abbie Schmidt. That is Trumbo. Maybe Eric will leave a couple of lines on Trumbo before we get out of this episode, but I have to get to the Korean film. But the good news is Bruce Perky has a very in-depth review of Trumbo. So do not be mad. Our Patreon assigned pick is covered this week. Abbie Schmidt, by the way, thank you for being a patron, by Bruce Perky. So thank you, Bruce Perky, for your review of Trumbo. We're going to close off with this movie, South Korean film called Yadang the Snitch. Quote, framed and left for dead by the ruthless prosecutor he once served, Kang-soo, who's a drug informant. Kang-soo is played by Kang Hanul. Kang Hanul is, you might know him for his work from, I believe, Squid Games? Yeah. So I think that might be the movie he's really, because I'm so bad with movies. Let's see. He's been in Squid Game. He was in 5 episodes of Squid Game the year 2024. Very popular actor. I wish I saw more. I saw the first season of Squid Game. I haven't seen the recent one. So don't even remember his character. But he's the lead in the
Again, another one? Damn.
Yeah, they have it. Yeah, see. Do you ever watch the original? You never got
I saw the original. That was good. I'm trying to think of where they would have went for a sequel.
Same thing. I think the sequel...
Do it again?
Yeah. We'll see if... I don't know if the sequel got really great reviews, but it's out on Netflix right now. But anyways, that actor, again, from Yadang the Snitch, his name is... What is his name? Is Kang Hanul. He is an informant in Yadang the Snitch. He is the aforementioned Snitch. He's very slick and he's very charming. What happens is he's the middleman. Whenever a drug bust goes down, the boss of that drug bust is taken by this informant. this informant takes him down along with the cops, but ultimately it's a really cool play because they usually get when they arrest someone, they arrest the head of the organization or whatnot, someone with power, and then the ruthless prosecutor does some kind of deal with that boss. And then it becomes this domino effect where the boss or the power person who's eventually arrested by the cops or taken by the prosecutor works a deal with the prosecutor. So the boss maybe gets saved and gets cleared for his crimes, but the underlings end up going to jail. So it's sad because that's the way bureaucracy works. A lot of the hard blue collar criminals get into jail while the boss usually escapes due to some kind of plea deal with the prosecutor. This is how the justice is doled out in Yadang the Snitch. And what happens is the snitch, in this case, Kang-soo, he's the one who ends up as the liaison between the cops and the drug dealers, and he ends up being the right-hand man of the prosecutor. But ultimately, the tables are turned. This drug informant is betrayed by his prosecutor friend, and he ends up looking at the other side of the coin. A very bad thing happens to him, and so what happens is this drug informant ends up teaming up with a cop he used to not get along with, and also a former actress who was really framed due to a really bad situation regarding a drug operation. There's a lot of very moving pieces, like different moving pieces in Yadang the Snitch. This is sort of an epic police crime drama where there's corrupt cops, and not corrupt cops, there's the corrupt prosecutor, there's the police officers trying to nail these drug addicts. There's also a presidential campaign, and one of the presidential hopeful's son, he's a drug addict and he's a troublemaker. So there's some political intrigue there. There's the rise to power with this prosecutor. There's all of these moving pieces in Yadang the Snitch, but ultimately all you need to know is it's a revenge drama, action thriller with, again, Kang Han-neul I'm butchering the name, Kang Han-neul as the leader, as the drug informant. Does the movie work? Yeah, it's close to, I think it's 122 minutes. Well done film. There's a couple of plot points which I did not like, and that's just me as a storyteller. I mean, not me as a movie watcher. I didn't like where one big moment in the story went, but that's just not a complaint. I wish it went someplace else. But overall, I enjoyed the film. Action is not really polished, and that's intendedly so. There's an action scene regarding a whole pool of eels, which is really well done, and the action is very unpolished, which I like, very gritty and very real. I really enjoyed Yadang the Snitch. And it's funny, the Kang-soo character, the drug informant, even though it's a revenge drama, but this character is not your average guy who's seeking revenge. He's a little bit of a trickster and a jokester, and it really plays out pretty well within the framework. It brings a lot more comedic elements to the movie, surprisingly comedic elements to Yadang the Snitch. I enjoyed it. I wish the showdown at the end was a little bit more dramatic, but I was still fine with it. Overall, it's a solid recommendation. 3.5 stars for Yadang the Snitch. Opens April 25th in US and Canada. If you are going to give Yadang the Snitch a try at your local theater, please stay till the end credits because there's a lot more story left to go. So do not leave when the end credits start. Stay for the end credits. Okay, that's it. Eric Holmes, you want to say anything about Trumbo before you get out of here? Because Bruce is going to do the big legwork of the interview.
I got a lot to say about Trumbo. I kind of want to save it for next week.
Okay.
I will say I like Trumbo a lot. And the bits and pieces I seen, there were lots that I didn't. Say John Goodman.
Okay.
I make garbage.
Okay, well,
Trumbo is great. I got a lot to say about it, and
you want to save it for next week then?
Yeah, I'll save it for next week. And then also, Bruce talked about adolescence. I caught up with that, so maybe we'll do that next week as well.
Okay, so we'll table some Eric's thoughts on adolescence, which is currently streaming on Netflix, and then Trumbo. He has some thoughts on Trumbo as well. The assigned pick this week was thanks to Abbie Schmidt for Trumbo. Bruce Berkey has that, but then we'll do a rewind next week with Eric Holmes. You want to say something before you get out of here and get to work, Eric Holmes?
If you can go to Clock Tower Con in October, do it. If you can't, that's fine.
Eric, and unlike me and Bruce, Eric actually loves people, so please meet Eric Holmes over at ClockCon. October
This
24th to
This
26th.
is no longer cinematics. This is blood on the clock tactics.
All right, guys. With that, again, I haven't used Claire's audio. It's become a bit right now. So here is Bruce Perky up in the cinematic.
Welcome to the Cinematic, the attic of cinema. This is a shortened attic. I have only crawled down from my hatch for a short time today. Why is that? Why am I only talking about a couple movies this week? I bet you can guess. Or if you can't guess, I will tell you it's because this is a Patreon week. Every month we have 1 week where we do a Patreon episode for those who want to throw in that catch-all $5 a month to help us out and to keep us running and to keep the lights on and to keep the hamburgers flowing for the other two members. I don't get hamburgers. I get kibble at best. Every so often I get some table scraps, but you know how that works. So what do we got today? Well, first of all, the Patreon is from 2015. If you get the Patreon episode, you're going to hear us talking about, oh, that's our cat. Hang on. You will hear us talking about the movie Spring from Benson and Moorhead. And you'll also hear us talking about Krampus, which is directed by, who is Krampus directed by? Oh yeah, Michael Dougherty, also of Trick or Treat fame. All right, but today I've got two movies. I've got a new screener of a little movie called Fréwaka. I don't know if I'm saying it right because it's Gaelic. And I also have another 2015 movie. We always do one kind of a bonus one on the main episode, so you guys get a taste of some of these older movies that we do from various years. And I am going to be talking about Jay Roach's Trumbo. All right, let's get this going. Fréwaka, I'm not sure how to say it. Once again, this is directed by Aislinn Clark, and this is going to be on Shudder. I don't think it's getting a theatrical release, but it's always hard to tell because Shudder will do limited theatrical releases as well. I think the little claim to fame of this movie, I think it might be marketing as the first Irish horror movie fully done in Gaelic, which I guess is what's happening here, which of course makes the pronunciation of everything incredibly intense and difficult for my Western, American ears. In fact, like I said, I don't even know if I'm saying Fréwaka right. That could be, there's a lot of different versions of the words that I'm used to hearing. We have two main characters. We have Shu. She's she's about late 30s, early 40s. Shu is played by Claire Monelly. And then the other main character, there's three characters really. There's Mila as well, but the other main character is Peg, I think that's how they say it, but it's P-E-I-G, Peg, played by Brid Ní Nectain. Once again, how do I say these Irish words and names? I don't know for sure. So what do we got here? You've got a couple enigmatic moments at the very beginning of this movie. One is there's a jump back to 1973. You see a wedding. It's a country wedding, obviously in Ireland. And the young bride goes outside of the hall where the raucous wedding, is happening. And, not the wedding, but, the party and everything afterwards, the reception. And she goes outside. If I remember correctly, she's just having a smoke or whatever. And off in the alleyway, there's a goat staring at her. And it's always bad when a goat stares at you in folk horror, especially, which this tends to be kind of firmly in the folk horror camp. And a goat is staring at her. Also, there was a bunch of people that came to the wedding with like a kind of straw wickery kind of helmety hat kind of things, like some kind of, once again, like, I don't know, fertility or kind of a folk festival garb. You're not supposed to really know, but it's vaguely creepy. Anyway, she goes out and she's staring at this goat. I've heard about what men that stare at goats, what that's all about, but women who stare at goats, I'm not so sure. Anyway, she stares at the goat. Her husband starts looking for her inside. He's freaking out. He runs around. He finally runs out there to find her, and all he sees on the ground is the ring. Da-da-dum. We cut forward to current day, and we have an older woman in a small, cluttered apartment. Seems very lonely. She seems all by herself. She's singing to herself, singing an Irish folk tune. They have the subtitles tell you what it's all about. Kind of seems somewhat ominous. You can never tell with folk tunes. There are a lot of times they're about death and life and birth and things. And either way, she's doing her song, she's singing her song. You're looking at her in a mirror image, and then you see that she climbs up on something, and then she puts a rope around her neck, and then she jumps off of something. And you can kind of guess where she ends up. And you kind of are sitting with her for a while as time passes. Eventually she falls, and eventually somebody comes to her now empty apartment after the police have arrived to clear it out. And that is Shu and Mila. And Shu is the woman's daughter. Shu leaves Mila, I guess her fiance, pregnant fiance, leaves Mila behind to clean the place out, which I think is a little odd. Hey, my mom, offed herself here, and I have a lot of memories. Go ahead and just take care of this, and I'm going to go off and take a job in the country. That's what she does. And anyway, that's the main point of the movie is she goes off, and they call it, what do they call it? Primary care. Basically, it's like in-home care for elderly people. That's what she was going to do for some older lady. And right out of the gate, when she gets to the small town to take care of this old lady in a big old house, it has this classic kind of trope, which is she goes into the small town. Of course, everyone's kind of looking at her sideways. And she's like, oh, do you know how to get to this house? And gives them the address. And they're like, oh, no. So those, don't go to that place. You'll never come back. That's Camp Blood. That they don't get that obvious with her. But they are saying, you turn around and go. And, go find the fairy tree and take a right. And you'll know it. You'll find it. I'm like, okay. So on her trip there, of course, there's the fairy tree, which is like a tree with all this junk hung from it, which is very, like, once again, very folk magic or whatever going on there. And she meets a kid with a goat, meets a kid with a goat in the alley, and they kind of stare at each other for a minute. Also near the fairy tree, there's a whole bunch of milk, just milk jars and milk cartons and stuff, just, the glass ones, sitting on the side of the road, half tipped over and stuff. Like, there's a lot of little, witchy things happening. And of course, she gets there and finds out immediately that the older woman may or may not have dementia. She may be really hard to deal with. And there is another classic trope, and that is the locked door. In fact, when I mentioned how we're going to do this cinematic originally, I said I'm kind of one of those locked doors in Eric's house. They just keep me up there, make me watch movies, and every so often I'm let down. Anyway, there's a locked door that has all these like horseshoes and all these metal objects around it. It's red, It's like, how many signs can you have that, oh, this house isn't good? And that's pretty much the setup. You've got Shu there taking care of this old lady. The old lady may or may not be, have dementia. She may not be may or may not be disturbed. Maybe is she possessed? What's going on? That's what you want to find out. Is there really spooky, witchy things going on there, or is there, is it just all folktale? Is Shu haunted by her past and maybe going to discover things? I mean, maybe. A lot of those things you can kind of suspect. So on the good side of this movie, the atmosphere it creates is truly, if you like this kind of thing, it's truly creepy. It seems pretty, I guess it seems pretty genuine. I'm sure there's a lot of real stuff in there from Irish folktales and Irish heritage that are real. I don't know them as much, so it might have more of an impact if you kind of know those stories. Things like the older lady leaves 7 of things every place. Or, for example, next to that red door, which obviously is locked and kept shut and there's something scary about it, she leaves 7 nails, laying flat down on the ground. There's a lot of like warding things off in this movie as well. And, paranoia that things might be coming after you. Or is it paranoia? Maybe it's real. So I guess the atmosphere is great. The 2 main characters are really engaging, and kind of watching this kind of interplay and the relationship between Shu and Peg is really good, because there's a kind of combination of suspicion, and both of them are very, very unwilling to let another person kind of into their lives. So it's kind of like the 2 opening up and letting each other in to a degree. That's kind of the main, I guess, dramatic flow of the movie, that kind of the biggest kind of draw as far as like, the characters go. And actually, to me, it's probably the strongest, other than the kind of atmosphere, that's probably the strongest part of this movie, is kind of watching these 2 characters kind of slowly let each other in. Now, as far as a horror movie goes, is it really very scary? I mean, like I said, it's creepy if that you like that kind of thing. Now, if you don't like that kind of thing, it will be super boring. I kind of like that kind of thing, so it is. I would say it's fairly effective at the creepiness. But, and like I say, I always say, I have a big but sometimes, but it doesn't really pay off. And that is always the danger of a slow burn horror indie movie, is that it just slow burns and then just kind of fizzles out. And I think to some degree, this movie kind of does that. It does have a climax of sorts. But like I said earlier, that I kind of mentioned things that were somewhat tropey. Not as, I think trope is kind of too strong a word, but definitely derivative of things you've seen before. I think this movie never quite like escapes that gravity field of derivativeness. There's always a little bit of like, I've seen versions of this before. In fact, a lot of people complained about like Midsummer being very much beholden to Wicker Man. And I think it has now gained, not Wicker Man, but Midsummer has gained its own place in kind of movie history, and people kind of can see it for its own thing, even though there are some, bones of Wicker Man in there. I think this movie is way more beholden to Wicker Man. I think this one is at its core, and it's not exactly the same story, but in its overall thrust and overall narrative arc, it's basically Wicker Man. So I guess you could see that as a spoiler to some degree. If you know what Wicker Man is, you kind of will know kind of where this is going. But I don't think it is a spoiler, because this is one of those movies where you feel like you know where it's going and you kind of know where it's going. So I think that's the biggest knock against this movie, is it just doesn't, it starts with such great tools. Like a painter has the best paints, the best canvas, the best, studio, all the time in the world to sit there. And then they kind of make another version of the Mona Lisa that's not quite as good. And that's the problem. You gotta kind of almost have your convictions to just take, the idea of a horror movie all in Gaelic. Cool. To me, I understand kind of the importance of that kind of in the culture of Ireland, because after seeing things like Kneecap and stuff, I kind of understand the importance of the Gaelic language and how it's been lost and all those kind of things. I think it's perfectly fitting and actually great for a horror movie, especially a folk horror movie. I could see that being amazing, but I just almost kind of wish they had their convictions to just go with something a little more strange, a little more unique, a little more absolutely different, because for horror fans, we can take it. And this is not going to really appeal to a non-horror fan anyway, so you might as well just go all out. Anyway, I'll still give it a mild recommendation. I think there's enough good stuff there that I enjoyed it overall. I just, at the first 30 minutes, I really thought I was going to really enjoy this movie, because I was kind of sinking into the tone and the mood and everything it was giving me was really cool. It just never like developed it fully. So I'm going to go 3 stars. 3 stars. I barely recommend. I wish it would have just been better. I'm sorry, but definitely the filmmaker has a good eye and an interesting management of tone. I would be interested to see what else Aislinn Clark can do. All right, the other movie we have is the kind of bonus Patreon movie for 2015 that makes it to this episode, and that is Trumbo. And Trumbo I had never seen before. Of the other Patreon movies, I'd seen both of them, so they're rewatches, but Trumbo is one of those I was just kind of aware of but never watched. With Jay Roach directing, and Jay Roach, of course, has done a ton of things. What do we got here? We got a bunch of really famous actors. First of all, this is kind of your classic biopic, and it also just feels like like old school biopic that is aimed for awards, because it has a historical figure, an interesting, story about a time in history, American history in this case, and a whole bunch of renowned actors. So you've got Helen Mirren as Hedda Hopper. You got Bryan Cranston as the Dalton Trumbo. You've got also Edward G. Robinson played. Oh, I didn't write I did not write down who played Edward G. Robinson. That was my bad. They'll probably mention it. Let's see, who else do we got here? We've got Diane Lane. She's playing the wife of Bryan Cranston's character, Dalton Trumbo. And then we also have Arlen Hurd played by Louis C.K. before he kind of went into semi-cancellation mode. I think he's kind of pretty canceled as far as like an actor. I haven't seen him in much of anything since then. And this tells a story that some version of has been done quite a few times. Trumbo is famously he was a screenwriter and a pretty renowned screenwriter for his time. And he became wrapped up in the whole McCarthyism and the blacklist. And I think most people are aware of that. You know, McCarthyism, looking for communists. They would call people in front of their committee for un-American activities, if I remember their name correctly. And you would get called in front of the committee. And first of all, they would try to get you to admit your communist ways. But even more importantly, because it was a Red Scare, they wanted you to name names. You needed to come up there and you needed to say, well, who do you know who is also a communist, so we can root out the communist scourge in America and especially Hollywood. It is interesting, I think, to watch this movie in current times. I think I probably got more out of it than I would have like maybe 15 or 20 years ago, because 15 or 20 years ago, we probably felt like, oh, this is such old style, and I'm glad that those days are behind us, but nothing like this anymore. But now, in our current era, the idea of these kind of really demagoguery, where you really are like creating, demonized groups within America, and people being, outed, quote, as one of those demonized people or friend of those demonized people, and the possible real ramifications for your life of being considered one of those people is quite pertinent nowadays, as you might expect. The interesting thing here is you've got a couple of things. First of all, it definitely shows up the well, for punk rockers, we were very aware of this, but it really shows up the absolute involvement in the Red Scare, getting the communist side for people in Hollywood like Ronald Reagan, who was very much involved in helping root out the communists, and John Wayne, some of the ultra-right members of Hollywood, and kind of how even in those days they were politically on the wrong side of the world, I guess, in my opinion. Both were pretty hated in the punk rock movement of the 80s. And some of them are still beloved these days and revered as great icons, when some of us knew that they were pretty terrible people. Think what you want to think. They also pretty much, and then after that, it pretty much just follows the life of Trumbo. Like, how he is early on very politically, I actually want to say on the communist side, very, very much on the very liberal side, really for like unions, really for workers, all those kind of things that would get him, of course, immediately identified when they start rounding up people for the, McCarthyism era. He, though, is a true believer. And you kind of see this between different characters in here, versus other people that are not as true believers or aren't willing to really put up the fight. He's willing almost to a fault to not name names and not give anybody up, to the point that he could get into prison. He could get fully blacklisted, like a lot of people. And a good chunk of this movie is, what do all of these, pretty renowned writers, especially, some actors as well, but what do these people do once they're blacklisted? How do they keep working? How do they survive? And that's kind of the big point of this movie, is like how they get along afterwards. Like, what does it do to his family? What does it do to himself? Because he kind of sticks to his guns. Does he keep writing? Does he continue to get acclaim, or does he fall into obscurity? And I won't really answer those questions if you don't know the answers, because that's kind of part of the, I guess, the arc of this movie, and the enjoyment of this movie is kind of discovering, what famous things were done by blacklisted artists, or what kind of things these blacklisted artists had to do to make it and continue working in Hollywood during those really, really rough years of mostly of like the 50s and 60s, somewhat into the 70s, but especially the 50s and 60s. It was really tough for a lot of these artists, both actors and writers, and a few directors, I think, too, as well. I think I'm going to say Patty Chayefsky, I believe, might have been wrapped up in that. Once again, not a great expert on that stuff. So, how great is this movie or not great is this movie? I think it's pretty darn good, but it's not. What do I say? This is a meat and potatoes biopic. Is it going to blow you away? I mean, it might. It didn't blow me away, but it also wasn't a slog. It was very, I don't know, like, sometimes we describe directors as being like really workmanlike, but in a good way. Like they're just solid and they give you really, I don't know, really fundamental entertainment that you can just watch, and you're not gonna get artistically challenged much, but you're gonna get very, very solid entertainment. And that's kind of what I feel this is in a biopic. Very solid, reliable, well done. You're in good hands with everybody here. Everybody's doing a great job acting. The production's very, very consistent. It's damning with faint praise. Not, not really. Sometimes that's all you want. Sometimes you want to get a movie. This is kind of like the dramatic biopic equivalent of a really well done action movie, right? Really well done action movie. You know what you want. You come in there and you get it, and you feel satisfied, even if your socks aren't blown off, to say what Anderson would say over at the Film Vault. Your socks might not be blown off, but you will feel well treated by this movie. So I'll probably go 3.5 stars for Trumbo. 3.5 stars, I think, is fair. And I think your mileage will vary with this depending on how much you know about the era. I think the less you know about the era, the more you can discover with this movie. To some people, this is going to be like a little bit mind-blowing. Like, whoa, there was a time in America where this happened. And if you're in that camp, this is going to definitely probably go up in your opinion because it'll give you a lot more information, which is a great thing in a biopic. You learn things. But if you kind of are like me and you kind of know at least the broad strokes, if not a little more, you're going to kind of more just enjoy the specific journey that Trumbo goes on. And just watching Cranston, like I say, great acting by everybody. I say Cranston, if anybody, is kind of in some ways the worst. He's a little more scenery chewing here. He's a little mannered, but it's okay because it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable to watch him kind of chew the scenery a little bit. And once again, just reminding you of how awesome Helen Mirren is and everything she is. If you've never seen young Helen Mirren, you are missing out. Young people, take it from an old. Helen Mirren was quite the knockout in her younger days and was absolutely a different kind of actor than you think now. You think of kind of like stately British, Judi Dench type or something. She was not, not at all. Anyway, I digress. That's really all I've got. Other than that, this week, continuing to watch The Last of Us Season 2. It continues to follow the games pretty closely, except for it's made a couple big, giant action set piece changes in Episode 2. But I'm not going to get into that and deal it all now anyway. Anyway, check out our Patreon coming up soon. Like I said, it's going to have Krampus. I've never heard of Krampus. I don't know what you're doing, but whatever. We're going to have Krampus and Spring, which a lot of people have not heard of Spring, and those people are really missing out. We look forward to having you be visiting us over there. And the next week, I'm sure we'll have a bunch of new screeners for you as well. All right. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you soon.